You want to make some picks on your favorite sports? Check out Underdog's Fantasy Pick'em game, where you can pick higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players and can win up to 325 times your entry by using code Niners when you sign up. And you'll get $1,000 bonus cash and a free pick.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about free agent tight ends. And the tight end behind George Kittle has been a problem in San Francisco for a while. And the 49ers have tried to find the answer. And I think we've all come to the conclusion that the 49ers were hoping to get a guy that can do it all, like the way George Kittle can. Maybe not to that level, but a guy that's effective in the passing game, but also is a good run blocker. And they've continually made efforts to try to find that player. Now, sometimes they've completely slanted one way or the other, just going and getting a run blocking tight end, or going out and getting a receiving tight end that has nothing to do with blocking, a guy like Jordan Reed, for instance. So the 49ers have definitely played it both ways, but we know that the 49ers run game took a big hit when Charlie Warner left and went to the Atlanta Falcons. Charlie Warner's effect on the run game was felt every single snap he was on the field. And yes, he was very underperforming and underwhelming when it came to catching the football. They drafted him out of Georgia, and they were hoping that he had developmental skills to be a developmental tight end in the NFL. Unfortunately, he never really developed. He couldn't get open, and the things that he did with the football in his hands weren't significant, and he became nothing more than a really good run blocker. But when you look at PFF grades for 2023, and you see George Kittle ranked number 1 amongst tight ends in PFF rankings, and Charlie Warner ranked number 2 in PFF rankings, you understand how significant Charlie Warner was to the 49ers offense. And how significant was he? Well, we know he was very significant because offensive line coach and run game coordinator Chris Foerster brought it up at the end of the season that they never really replaced Charlie Warner and what he was able to do within the 49ers offense. They didn't have to worry about the things he did. He made blocks that no one else could make besides George Kittle, and between the two of them, they were just really good at making plays happen and helping the 49ers outside zone game be effective, but also he could pull and he could wham block and he could do a lot of things that really made it easier for the 49ers offense. And so missing that was definitely something they felt this season. And how do we know that they knew they were going to miss it? Of course, they didn't want to pay what the Atlanta Falcons played for Charlie Warner. But how do we know that they were going to miss it? Well, they tried to sign an offer sheet with Brock Wright last year from the Detroit Lions. That kind of played their hand a little bit, where we got to see that they needed somebody they felt was a good blocker to help this offense. So the next option was Eric Saubert. And we've seen what Eric Saubert did this year. They also signed Logan Thomas, who was more of the pass catcher role. And I think maybe they were hoping they were going to get Logan Thomas to do a lot of the pass catching things with George Kittle and create some opportunities in the passing game. And then for Eric Saubert to be able to block and play special teams and do a lot of the dirty grunt work for this 49ers tight end room. But we know that didn't work out. Logan Thomas hurt his hamstring in training camp. He was gone, then he came back, but he never was right. In fact, never was right enough to end up on an NFL roster. And then Eric Saubert didn't play up to the expectations that people had for him. And if you were listening to all the people talk during training camp, not me, but a lot of people, they were telling you how good Eric Saubert was going to be. He was dead set, tied into Charlie Warner with receiving upside. And that wasn't the case. Eric Saubert's a well-traveled veteran and a good football player, but he's not good enough to make the blocks that Charlie Warner made. So the 49ers have a predicament when it comes to tight end. None of their young tight ends have worked out, which we're going to talk about. The Eric Sauber didn't work out. We're going to talk about that as well. So they definitely need to address a need when it comes to tight end in this upcoming free agency and probably the draft as well. So we're going to get into all that. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. The biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. We have hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online offers you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today and make the game day action count a little bit more. Bet Online, the game starts here. So we kind of mentioned a little bit about the 49ers' troubles at tight end and having to address it in free agency and in the draft. And there are some good tight ends in the draft. But part of the reason the 49ers are still having to address this is they struck out in the draft when it came to a couple years ago, Cameron Latu and Braden Willis. And both guys were very much highly touted in that draft. Latu could have went a little bit early. I had a late 4, early 5th round grade on him. They took him, of course, with a comp pick in the 3rd round. And with Braden Willis, he went kind of a little bit later than everyone thought. I had a late 5 on him, and he ended up going in the 7th. So I think that both of those guys were looked at as potential developmental projects for the 49ers. Good size, good speed, had upside as receiver. And, that's what Cameron Latu looked like, the receiving guy that could develop when it came to blocking. Braden Willis, the blocking guy that could develop when it came to even more receiving. And you just saw some potential in both of those guys. That way, when Charlie Warner did move on last offseason, you were prepared. They were doing what they did with Aaron Banks and Laken Tomlinson, or what they're doing with Aaron Banks and other guys. They're preparing for that next wave of guys to come in and step up as they potentially lose someone in free agency. Did not work out. Cameron Latu is on another practice squad, and Braden Willis was the 4th tight end for the 49ers this season. Neither one of those guys are going to play into the long-term goals for the 49ers and long-term answers for the 49ers at the position. So they had to move on. We talked about Eric Sauber a little bit, and Sauber just wasn't as effective blocking. He didn't really make any plays when it came to the passing game. And so you just didn't get anything out of Eric Sauber that you were hoping you were going to get from tight end 2. He had 97 total receiving yards and 1 touchdown, and the touchdown came late in the season. And like I said, Sauber is good at special teams. He's not a terrible player, but you're definitely looking for more. And I think where 49er fans were the most disappointed was when it came to the blocking. And I think that's an area where we can kind of target that the 49ers need to focus on is blocking. Now, they also had Jake Tunges, who earned a roster spot, completely shocked me with his training camp that he earned a roster spot. Now, I did like Jake Tunges coming in because of his versatility. He originally made it in the NFL as a fullback for the Chicago Bears. And the 49ers, of course, got him once he was cut from the Bears, put him on the practice squad. Last year, he earned a roster job when he went through training camp. He barely played this season. Jake Tunges did not get on the field on offense pretty much at all. And so I don't know what Jake Tunges' future is with the 49ers. He's an exclusive rights free agent. We'll see if they tender him a contract. They could. I think there's a possibility that Jake Tunges won't be a part of the 49ers. In fact, I think there's a possibility that Sauber, Tunges, and Willis all won't be a part of the San Francisco 49ers tight end room, which means the cupboard could be entirely bare. It could be just George Kittle, and the 49ers got to fill some holes. So who do you fill the holes with? Well, is there anyone out there that's as good a blocker as Charlie Warner? Probably not as good, but there are some guys, there's some good veterans that could be available that do block really well when it comes to the tight end position. So I want to put a focus on some of those guys. We'll sprinkle in some of the just pass catchers because the 49ers have shown that they're willing to do that, right? Jordan Reed, Logan Thomas take shots on guys who are just pass catchers because we know Kyle Shanahan has a vision for that. He has a vision for two pass catching tight ends that he can use in a variety of ways. So that's an option, especially if one of those guys is better and maybe financially cheaper than potentially one of the road grading blocker guys. So that's one of the things we're going to go through. We're going to talk a lot about the guys who can do the blocking, because I think that might be a target, especially when you look at the draft. And I won't spend too much time on the draft, but if you're looking at the tight end position in the draft, you are going to see that there are some very talented football players that are out there, right? There's some guys that are definitely up there at the top when it comes to potential. And I think that's one thing that I'm curious to see is where those tight ends kind of end up landing, because there's going to be a point of emphasis, and I've seen people say there could be as many as two tight ends go in the first round, and I don't know if that's true. I feel like two tight ends is a lot, but a lot of people are very high on Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland out of Michigan. Those guys could be first round guys. Then later on, you have Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green and Mason Taylor and Gunnar Helm, and then Elijah Arroyo, who just had a really good Senior Bowl. Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. Talented tight ends. I think there are more receiving tight ends in this draft than there are potential blockers, right? I mean, until you get to like Jackson Haas, who can really block, you might have more options when it comes to a blocking tight end if you go in free agency. Plus, it has predominantly been a position that's a little bit tougher to translate to in the NFL. And we've seen guys do it, right? George Kittle had a really good rookie season. We've seen Brock Bowers this last year have a tremendous rookie season, but not everyone is those type of players. And it might take them a little bit of time to adjust to playing tight end in the NFL. So where do we start? Well, I wanted to go at people that made sense for the 49ers. And one of those guys that makes sense is because Kyle Shanahan likes to go with players he's familiar with. If he spent time with them, he does like to bring those guys in. He understands what they do already, their skill sets, how they are mentally, and if they love football. And so he kind of draws from that. And then he already has an idea of their skill set, so he doesn't have to guess at the things they can do. Because a lot of times when you're breaking down a free agent, yeah, you've seen them do it on the field, but unless they've played in your system, it's projection, right? This was one of the big things that the 49ers did with John Feliciano, is they projected, can he fit in our system? They didn't see him play in the system. And Chris Verster thought, well, maybe he could. The scouts thought for sure he could. Chris Verster thought maybe he could. Watched, he's like, I don't know, maybe. And then he proved that he could. So without that projection, you can make really good decisions. And one of the guys the 49ers could definitely bring in free agency is Austin Hooper. And I feel like this gets talked about all the time, but he spent this season with the New England Patriots. But he was with Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta in 2016. So he has a really good idea of who Austin Hooper is. And Hooper's been around. Hooper's been playing around the league, and lately he's been well-traveled. And so that's something to remember as he moves around. The last 3 years, it was with Tennessee, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the New England Patriots. And part of the reason, right, he's with those guys is because with New England and Tennessee, you had Mike Vrabel, and then you also had Josh McDaniels. So you get kind of a similar thought process with that position and the use of tight ends. Now, here's why it makes sense as well. So the 49ers have a guy on their staff, Mick Lombardi, who was a part of those Bill Belichick, John McDaniels offenses that employed a two tight end set led by Gronk that was very good. And so he has an understanding of what 12 personnel means. So getting a guy that already played in that similar type of system that you already know can play in Kyle's system makes a lot of sense. And when you look at the numbers, he's been a very successful receiving tight end. Now, he can block. He's not just a receiver. This is a guy that can do both. Is he going to block at the highest of levels like Charlie Warner? No. But this is a guy that can definitely get some things done. So, of course, he was with Atlanta, then with Cleveland, Tennessee, Las Vegas, and New England. But he's done a very good job, and I think that he could be a real option for the 49ers. When you just look at what he did this year, he did play in all 17 games. He started 8 of those games, and he had 45 receptions for 476 yards. That's over 10 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. So you're looking at a guy that was making plays for New England. And it took a while for them to get Drake May involved. I think he could be very good for the 49ers. And I don't think he's going to break the bank either. When you look at, what he could potentially get on the open market, I don't think it's going to be something the 49ers couldn't afford when you're talking about a backup tight end. Right now, Spotrac is putting his market value at 1 year, $4 million or $4.1 million. So the way the 49ers do it with contracts and add on void years, you could get him to a very limited cap number, and then you would have your tight end, behind George Kittle. So I think that that's a possibility for the 49ers, that they could bring in Austin Hooper. And this is not a reinventing the wheel. A lot of people have been talking about Austin Hooper fitting into this system. Now, next up for me is going to be Tommy Tremble. And Tommy Tremble, the reason that I bring him up, and I've heard others now bringing him up, which is great, is I've always thought Tommy Tremble was a 49ers fit. So when he came out of Notre Dame, I looked at him and I saw his ability to be an H-back style move tight end. I saw him be able to be inline, a receiving threat, but a very talented blocker, whether that was out of the backfield or on the move or at inline. So I've liked him a lot. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. He just finished his rookie contract. He's only 24 years old, still super young. And I think right here is where you're getting into a little bit of the projection. Is you see him, you see his skill set, and it just makes sense. Now, he did not play a lot of snaps last year for Carolina, but this is a guy that fits what the 49ers want to do. And the way that Kyle Shanahan could use him would be huge. And I don't know for sure if he could develop into doing some of the things that Kyle Juszczyk does as fullback. Of course, Kyle Juszczyk's under contract for another season, but maybe Tommy Tremble could take some of the pressure off, and when the 49ers go 12 personnel, do some of the things that Kyle Juszczyk did once Kyle Juszczyk officially moves on. So I'm not telling you he's Kyle Juszczyk, but I'm telling you he's got that kind of versatility. Now, I don't think Carolina has ever used him correctly. I don't think that he's ever gotten the proper usage of his skill set, but I think Kyle Shanahan could use him in the proper way to completely elevate his game. And so that's why I like him a lot. He's going to be dirt cheap. There is no way that there's going to be a high price for Tommy Tremble. It's not going to happen. He just hasn't even gotten that much attention. And so we'll look at what his market value is according to Spotrac. But, I mean, there's just no way this guy is going to be out there for too much money. So they're actually saying Tommy Tremble is going to be 2 years at $11.5 million. So $5.8 million per year. I still think that's very affordable. I think that goes in playing into people's belief that he's not used very much. He's still 24 years old, and there's a lot of upside when it comes to what he could be for the San Francisco 49ers or any team that decides to bring him in. So for me, Tommy Tremble is one of the guys at the top because I do think that he would fit what the 49ers want to do, and they probably should have drafted him a while back, but he got taken by Carolina. So we got Austin Hooper, the kind of the older, veteran, skilled, played for Kyle Shanahan. And then you've got Tommy Tremble, who's more the projection, that he fits the scheme, he fits the system, and we know Kyle Shanahan can find a lot of things for him to do. He could do a lot of the things like Charlie Warner did as far as blocking. Is he as good as Charlie Warner at blocking? I don't know if anyone is. That's going to be a backup tight end that's going to be available, whether it's in the draft or in free agency. So what you're trying to do is find somebody that can do a better job than Eric Saubert, improve the position. I think Tommy Tremble would be one of those guys that could definitely do that. Next up on the list is Mo Alley-Cox. So Mo Alley-Cox, of course, has been playing for the Indianapolis Colts, and he's a big guy, 6'5", 267 pounds, and he's known for his blocking. He's known for his ability to be a solid backup tight end. He did not do a lot in the passing game last year, 147 yards and a touchdown. But I think everyone who has watched Mo Alley-Cox throughout his career understand that he can make plays in the passing game if he's asked to. So another guy that I like, and we're sticking to the theme right now of guys that can really block and then can make a little bit of plays when it comes to the receiving game. Now, I will say this. I think Tommy Tremble has a lot of upside when it comes to his potential to catch the ball. Upside that I don't see in guys that I didn't see in Charlie Warner, that I haven't seen in Eric Saubert. He's way more talented than that. So that's why he's higher on my list. Austin Hooper, he's already proven that he can be that guy. Almost 500 yards receiving, a few touchdowns. Like, are you kidding me? So Mo Alley Cox makes sense in a variety of ways, and you're going to get that big veteran guy. Now he is 31 years old, but this is a mover. He moves people at the point of attack, and that's what the 49ers need. And so he could be an option. I think first option, right? You probably want to look at Tommy Trimble, the young, player that can still have some upside. But then you have to decide. You have Austin Hooper, who's got the ability to do both. Mo Alley Cox could be a really good run grading, blocking at the point of attack tight end. And so I think he's a real option for the 49ers, especially because I think he translates to the system and what they want to do. And that would free you up to go ahead and get a young tight end, or find a receiving threat tight end that you could kind of pair with Mo Alley Cox, and he could do a really good job for your football team. So to me, Mo Alley Cox makes a lot of sense for the 49ers. I think we're kind of pinpointing a few guys they could be targeting early. Now, I want to take a quick break from tight ends to talk to you about Underdog Fantasy. So Underdog Fantasy has a higher lower game, and for the big game, I'm going to be playing higher lower as well. And all you have to do is sign up for Underdog Fantasy, download the app, and use the promo code Niners. That's NINERS, and play the higher lower game. And you'll get up to $1,000 in free cash and a free pick. So you can get bonus cash up to $1,000 and a free pick. And they've got some really good picks right now for higher lower. So this is what I play. This is what I'm playing for the big game. I've got Travis Kelce higher than 0.5 total yards. Yeah, it's basically a give me, thanks to Underdog Fantasy. So I know for a fact I'm going 1-for-1. Travis Kelce's going to make a catch and get a yard. Minus him getting shut out, that would be one of the biggest, debacles in the history of the big game. But then I also got Kareem Hunt going higher than 45.5 rushing yards. I think he's going to get it done on the ground a little bit. I don't think it'll be a lot, but I see him getting into the 60s when it comes to getting that ground game going against Philly. I think Andy Reid's going to want to stay balanced, and so that makes sense. And then I got Jalen Hurts getting at least one rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown. And I think it's going to be a rushing touchdown. The way that they work it down there and use the tush push, I think Jalen Hurts is going to have an opportunity. And then if you do that, you have a chance to win. So it's a great time. Play higher, lower. Use the promo code Niners. It helps me out. You have a lot of fun, and you can enjoy your big game experience just a little bit more using Underdog Fantasy. But back to our free agent tight ends, because there's still more names on the list, even though Austin Hooper, Tommy Trimble, and Mo Alley Cox are my top three names that I'm interested in. Unless for whatever reason Atlanta decided that they were going to cut Charlie Warner, well, then I'd probably bring him back because he's the best blocking tight end, not named George Kittle, that's played for the 49ers in recent memory. But that's not going to happen. So let's talk about Jordan Akins. He played for the Cleveland Browns this season, and he had a really good season. He's 6'4", 245 pounds. He's 32 years old. He's a veteran. But when you're talking about a guy who made some plays in the receiving game, 390 yards this season receiving, 2 touchdowns, but he's a solid edge blocker as well. So it's a guy that has some ability to do both. And just like Mo Alley Cox, this is a guy that's been around a little bit, right? Austin Hooper, Mo Alley Cox, Akins. These are guys who have played a lot of football and understand what they're supposed to do at the point of attack, how to play in a zone scheme. And the reason I picked Akins a lot, he makes a lot of sense playing with Cleveland Browns. You're in Kevin Stefanski's offense. Now, is it a exact replica or or is it just an offshoot? It's an offshoot of Kyle Shanahan's system, but there's going to be some key principles that are similar. So you can watch him play and see how he fits the 49ers scheme. So that's why I kind of liked an opportunity for Jordan Akins to come in and play. And we're talking about some older veterans now that are going to be a little bit cheaper. And that's one thing to remember as well, because the 49ers, even though they want to get a player that fits, they also don't want to overpay. That's one of the keys, is don't overpay for a backup tight end. You got to extend George Kittle during the offseason anyways. You don't want to be paying too much to one position. And for Jordan Akins, he would be, according to Spotrac, 1 year, $2.9 million. That's kind of what you're getting. He ranked as the 32nd best tight end this season. So obviously right close to a backup, right? Not a starter, a backup. And I think it would make sense for the 49ers if they decide to go that route. They're able to watch him in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And that just makes it a little bit easier when it comes to seeing what you got and what you don't got. Now, another guy that's older, but had a really good season for the New York Giants, and not a lot of great things come out from New York with the New York Giants, but this is another older guy, big, tall guy, is Chris Manhurt, 6'6", 235, but a really solid blocker. Had a good run blocking grade, was very effective when it came to pass blocking as well. And so this is a guy the 49ers could be interested in. We're talking about key veterans and guys who understand it. Now, this would be, once again, projection. He's not played, in the offense this season. He played in a very different offense. But when you only allow a few hurries and you're in pass protection a lot because you have a lot of injuries along the offensive line, people take notice. And so even though he only had 30 receiving yards and a touchdown, that's not why you would be bringing him in. You would be bringing in Manhurts because of his blocking ability and his versatility to not just pass block, but also run block and execute in his zone scheme and execute at the point of attack. So it's a name that you got to pay attention to. I don't think he's the first choice. In fact, I don't think he's the third or fourth choice. But if you're trying to save money, you're trying to stay cheap and still get a guy that you can bring in for blocking, you could make a solid third tight end. And I've argued this before, that if you told me Eric Saubert was going to be the 49ers' third tight end, I'd be fine with that. I just think they need to upgrade tight end 2. And this has been one of the arguments for a long time. Finding a dual threat guy, a guy that can block and catch the football, is very significant. Now, one more guy, before I talk about a pass catcher, that I just wanted to bring up. And this is actually Tommy Trimble's teammate. And that's Ian Thomas, 6'4", 260 pounds. And there's a long time that they thought he was going to be the next great tight end for Carolina. But dude only had 7 receiving yards this season. Ian Thomas is a very good blocker. So they had good blocking tight ends with Tommy Trimble. They thought he was going to have a lot more upside when it came to catching the football. And I think that's the same thing with Ian Thomas. Both of these guys would be super cheap, super affordable. And I think Trimble is definitely, if you had to choose between the two, the guy you go with. He's only 24, but Ian Thomas is only 28 as well. And I think you could sign him to a vet minimum deal, bring him in, and then potentially see what he would end up developing into. So he's somebody that I think the 49ers would be interested in. Another guy that the 49ers could be interested in, if they decided to bring him in, is Johnny Munt. So Munt plays for the Minnesota Vikings. And he's 30 years old, but he's been playing in Kevin O'Connell's offense. And Johnny Munt, it's funny. I would go on with One Bar and Lupegas, and they're Minnesota Vikings podcasters. That's who they cover. And they were trying to trade me Johnny Munt for years. So they didn't really want him. He's out of Oregon. But Johnny Munt still does some things. He would only be $1.9 million. He blocks. He plays effectively. So you're talking about scheme fit. Yes, Kevin O'Connell's scheme, he would fit. So maybe Johnny Munt could be somebody that could be third tight end. I don't think he could be the second tight end. I don't think anyone would want it. Well, let's talk about the pass catchers. And there are some pass catchers out there. I think the first name I got to bring up is Zach Ertz. And I think the 49ers probably don't touch Zach Ertz. And in fact, I think if Zach Ertz is going to play in 2025, it's going to be for the Washington Commanders. He had such a resurgence there. Really great season, 7 touchdowns. But he's, at this point in his career, more of a consistent pass catcher, a chain mover, which, 49ers definitely could use, but they have Jawan Jennings. He's a chain mover. They have Deebo Samuel. He's a chain mover, right? Christian McCaffrey. Jawan's, of course, the best. So I don't know if you want Zach Ertz at this point in his career, but I thought I better bring it up because sure as I don't, he's going to end up, being evaluated to come to the 49ers. But I think right now, I would think he's going to stay in Washington. I think that gives him an opportunity. He used to playing in the NFC East. Thought he had a great season, showed he can still produce at a high level. This is a guy a lot of us thought was going to retire a couple years ago. So I do think that he'll be talked about. I don't think he's an actual option for the 49ers, and not so much that he wouldn't fit, because he would. I think it's just more so that the 49ers will go in a different direction. I think he will go in a different direction. And the other one is a guy that's played in the system in a couple of stops, and that's Mike Gesicki. So Mike Gesicki is a guy that was with the Cincinnati Bengals this last season, and he was pretty good. He was ranked, 13th best amongst all tight ends with a 71.5 overall grade. He had 665 yards receiving coming from Joe Burrow, and he had 2 touchdowns, which that's not exactly the best. He's 6'6", 245 pounds, and he's 29 years old. Now, when it comes to receiving, I mean, this guy does it at a high level. When it comes to blocking, he doesn't. So if Kyle Shanahan was looking at Mike Gesicki, and, this is the thing, right? He played with the Miami Dolphins. Mike McDaniel let him go after 1 year. And I think he's very serviceable when it comes to receiving tight end. So this would be your Jordan Reed, your Logan Thomas. That's who he is. You're going to get nothing for him when it comes to blocking. So you would have to pair him with a guy that blocks a ton. And so to me, I think that though it could be a possibility if Kyle decides to go that way again, the way that he did with the other two, I think he's going to be searching more for a blocking tight end. So bringing up Mike Gesicki, yes, that makes sense. And I just want to cover, just because these guys are some of the best that are going to be on the open market, and I just want to kind of rule them out for the 49ers, is Tyler Conklin. He comes from the Jets, and yes, people are probably going to tie him to the 49ers because of Robert Saleh, and I know he plays offense, but he's going to be too expensive, and he's not exactly the most proficient blocker. I don't think Tyler Conklin would be somebody the 49ers want. They can't pay 2 tight ends a lot of money. Another one from New Orleans, Jawan Johnson, he's going to get paid. So I don't think he's somebody the 49ers would be interested in as well. They're not looking for tight end 1. They're looking for tight end 2, and they're not going to pay somebody like Jawan Johnson over $10 million per season. So those guys, go ahead and kind of put them out of your mind. But I wanted to bring them up because there's, you got to just talk about everyone and just kind of rule out who is there. So if I had to go through my top list, I think that Austin Hooper, Tommy Tremble, and Mo Alley Cox probably make the most sense for the 49ers. Guys who can block and can catch. Both of them all of them have proven they can block and catch. I think Hooper is the best receiver out of all of them. I think that Tommy Tremble has the most upside out of the 3, and I think Mo Alley Cox is actually the best blocker of all 3. So it's pick your poison when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and deciding what you want at tight end. Let me know what you guys would do at tight end. Would you just bypass free agency and go straight to the draft and hope you get a guy there? Do you double up, get 1 in free agency, 1 in the draft? That's what I would do. I'm curious what you have to think. And if you're going to sign one of these free agents, which one would you get? Let me know in the comments section. I'm really curious. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.